Once we bring in consciousness, it is so easy to explain quantum mechanical phenomena like superposition and entanglement. Superposition is just a higher dimensional entity. In fact, it appears to be superposition only for us, because for us, we can only recognize an actualized state. We cannot recognize an unactualized state. For us, unactualized state is a very fuzzy, confusing place where one thing is in multiple places, having different energy levels. It's both here and over there. That is why we simply call it superposition. Now we know thoughts are exactly like this. Just sit and close your eyes, watch your thoughts. Can you pinpoint and say, my thought is exactly here? If that is the case, just open your eyes and go back to that thought. Is it still there? No. It's exactly the same way. You will never be able to pinpoint exactly where a thought is and what exactly it is. A thought itself is a wave of probability. While you're thinking about it, you can actualize that thought in a million different ways. In fact, in infinite number of ways. For example, if you have a thought of getting up and taking a walk, it's a thought. You can even say it's a single thought, just of getting up and taking a walk. But in how many different combinations can you do this? In how many different ways can you get up? You can put your left leg out of the chair first, or your right leg out, or both your legs out, or you can use your hand on the armrest to push yourself up, or you can first turn to the left to look at something and then get up. Million ways. Even the smallest of movement represents a complete state. That is why thoughts are always in a state of superposition. Although when we are thinking about it, it appears like it is something definite, it is never definite. Let's say you decide to go to the post office. It's one thought. But in how many different ways can this one thought manifest itself? Infinite combinations. That is what we refer to as a superposition, where it has many different possibilities. Now, which state gets actualized? We can never precisely say. We can at the most calculate the probabilities. The most excited state usually has the highest probability of getting actualized. And even that is probabilistic because it happens in a single moment. That choosing happens in a single moment without any temporal movement. See, when a measurement is made, for us, it's sequence. Oh, we made the measurement and the collapse of the wave function happened. We track it in time. But there is no concept of time in consciousness. It is all immediate. The collapse of the wave function happens immediately. Even the word choice makes sense only from our three-dimensional perspective. As far as consciousness is concerned, it is not even a choice. Consciousness is not sitting there and watching different thoughts and saying, okay, which one do I choose? Everything happens instantaneously. That is what superposition is, where all the possible combinations exist, but when the measurement is made, one state is chosen without any time lapse. Consciousness never gets confused and says, I'm unable to choose. Or it's taking time for me to choose. It's impossible because there is no concept of time and space in the fourth dimension. Again, it's important to remember that consciousness is not four-dimensional. It is the fourth dimension. We have to be very careful in how we use these words. The moment we say consciousness is four-dimensional, then we start imagining it as something that has four arms and four legs, four parts, spatial dimensions. It's not four-dimensional. It is the fourth dimension, which means it is its own entity. It is its own totality, which has nothing to do with our three-dimensional space. Dimensions should only be recognized as a dimension in its entirety. One-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, we can use the words dimensional because these are all things we are familiar with. We are tracking the properties of the lower dimension from our three-dimensional world. Hence, we can say that is a one-dimensional object. That's a two-dimensional object. But we cannot say the same to a higher dimension. We cannot say consciousness is four-dimensional, because what does that even mean? The right way of referring to it is the fourth dimension with its own properties that have to be derived independently of our three-dimensional world. So once we understand what consciousness is, we will know what superposition is. Superposition is the world of thoughts, the excited state of consciousness. And what is entanglement? We say in quantum mechanics that two particles can be entangled in such a way that the collapse of the wave function of one particle immediately collapses the wave function of another entangled particle, no matter how far it is, irrespective of the distance. The collapse of the wave function happens immediately. Now, I think it was the last Nobel Prize was given to a group of Chinese scientists who entangled two particles measurably at the longest possible distance up until now. I think it was the distance between Earth and Moon, I suppose. Entangled particles across such long distances. Showing that we are not understanding something here. Firstly, what is this entanglement? How can these two particles be entangled? How are they communicating with each other? Because when the wave function of one particle collapses, for example, let's say particle A is spinning in a clockwise direction, particle B is spinning in the anti-clockwise direction. Now, this is an entangled pair. An entangled pair need not always be the exact same. Both need not be spinning in the clockwise direction. They can also be entangled in an opposite way. But entangled means the state of this particle is connected to that particle. Now, the moment the wave function collapses and this particle assumes a definite position, the entangled particle also immediately assumes a definite position. Although there is no observer anywhere near it, there is no measurement happening, just the fact that this particle has been actualized, this other particle that is so far away has been actualized. Now, this is where Einstein said, okay, this is spooky action at a distance and I don't like it. Because according to Einstein, nothing can move faster than the speed of light. Speed of light is the absolute limit in the universe. Now, how is it possible that information that this particle has been actualized is realized by another particle instantaneously? There should be a time lag because information travels. The maximum speed at which information can travel is the speed of light. Now here it's happening instantaneously, breaking one of the most fundamental rules of physics, of the speed of light. Now, we've been trying to understand it, trying to figure out why this happens, we have not figured it out. It's because we have not defined consciousness. We have not defined this higher realm. This is where theories like string theory, M theory, they're all trying to mathematically solve these equations without realizing that the problem is not mathematics. The problem is understanding the fundamental nature of reality. If the fundamental nature of reality is space, then you can create some kind of mathematical formulation to explain why these two particles are entangled. What if the fundamental nature of reality is a mind? It is not space. What if entanglement is a very natural process, because in the mind there is no distance separating two particles? It is only when an observer comes into the picture and a particular state is actualized, these two particles appear to be in two different places. Before the measurement, do you know where they are? They're entangled, but do you know if there's any distance separating them? You would never know. That is the whole point of superposition. We are unable to pinpoint their positions. That's because there is no definite position for these particles. Because they are not particles, they're all thoughts. In fact, the word particle, we are clinging to it because that is where our inquiry into the subatomic world started. Defining an atom, defining an electron. But now we already know that there are no particles. They're all waves. And that is why a theory like string theory is trying to explain all individual subatomic particles as vibratory one-dimensional strings. Depending on how this string vibrates, it creates a certain particle. In fact, it doesn't even create. When you measure it, a particular vibration freezes like a standing wave, and that standing wave is what we recognize as a particle. So electron is a standing wave, proton is a standing wave, neutron is a standing wave. We're trying to mathematically explain this. Now, entanglement is so easy to explain. In consciousness, 2 points are never 2 different points. They are one and the same point. Because there is no distance there. There is no space. It is a mind. A conscious mind can be aware of 2 things that are separated by enormous distance. That distance exists only in our 3-dimensional world. In the 4th dimension, nothing is spread out of 2 particles existing in 2 different places. That is the fundamental property of consciousness. We cannot imagine this because our imagination is limited. We can only imagine something in space. The moment we imagine something, we put it in space. In a way, consciousness is this higher dimension where the entire visible universe and all the universes that can ever be created is sitting on a single point. On a single point. But this point is not spatial. This point is not small or big. This point is not here or there. Hence, our imagination shuts down. When you subjectively go on an inward journey through meditation, through mindfulness, and experience that point, you will see it's not a point, it is one entire world by itself. In fact, you cannot even call it a world because it can create worlds. It is a pure mind. No space, no time, no distance, but a vastness and immensity that you cannot even comprehend. Only when you're there, you can actually experience this immensity. You will see space itself is such a small, tiny, slivering shadow of this mind. We cannot see this from outside because we are actualized states in consciousness. We are a thought, a shadow that is visible through the interaction of consciousness and light. Turn off the light, you can't even see the shadow. Now, the difficulty of understanding what consciousness is the difficulty of a shadow trying to understand what light is. We can at the most get to it objectively, mathematically define it, but to know what it is as an experience, we have to go on an inward journey. Now, this is what mystics, meditators have been doing since the beginning of time. While the rest of the world has accepted physicality as the fundamental nature of reality, a few individuals said, no, there's got to be something more to this.